Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 26th edition of the No Payne podcast. And it just so happens that the 26th edition seems to be the edition where we have some technical difficulties on the intro. Carly, you're fabulous at your job. It was me. I am at fault. But who doesn't want to know the title throughout the entire intro video? Anyways, on to our guest. Today, I have the luxury of interviewing Egbert Jager. Egbert Jager. I'm sorry, Egbert. I totally butchered it, and I thought I would, but I thought it.
Goedemiddag, ik ben Egbert Jager. Yes, I am Egbert Jager, and I'm Diamond Home Inspection.
Terrific.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I apologize. That was probably the worst anyone could pronounce your name.
No, that was about middle of the road.
But I think as long as we got a few people chuckling out there, it was worthwhile in the end.
Absolutely.
So, as you said yourself, you're the owner of Diamond Home Inspection, and thank you for having. Thank you for being here, in other words.
Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course, we're happy
Looking forward
to
to it.
obviously highlight and help spread the word about local business. So, what got you interested in home inspections in the first place?
I have always been involved in construction. I ran away from that to go to university and did construction afterwards. I ran away from the country and taught English and came back to construction. And then it just got to a point where I was kind of tired of fixing other people's mistakes all the time. And somebody suggested I just learn to become a home inspector, and then all I had to do was write about it.
Right.
So that's how I got started.
Hey, right on. Yeah, I mean, after spending so much time constructing, I mean, you're obviously seeing how things should be. And, I mean, with that expertise, you could very easily point out what's wrong if you were able to notice things of that nature. So.
It's, the diverse background. My father was a journeyman carpenter growing up, residential, commercial construction, doing commercial and residential myself, and then eventually running my own home renovation company. It was just, that whole depth and breadth of knowledge to be able to recognize not just individual components, but that a house is a system and it's a collection of individual systems, and you can't affect any one part without affecting all of it. So it's been really helpful to have all that background knowledge for sure.
Right, of course, yeah. I know what you're saying when you say, one aspect of, the build itself can have an effect on other parts. For example, if you have issues within the attic, I guess, say with ventilation or HVAC systems, things like that, they can actually help to more quickly deteriorate the shingles themselves, right? So that kind of
absolutely,
kind of thing.
Yeah. And the very first picture, I'm going to jump right to it, is
sure. Yeah,
we've got this crazy roof line picture where, the framers did this weird configuration of different roof planes that all got stuck together, and then the roofers had to come along and try and make something of it.
Yeah, wow.
Maybe that's the best they could have done. I don't know. I see lots of interesting things during home inspections.
And this was a brand new roof, in other words, or how long it had been since it was installed?
It was probably only 6 or 8 years by the time I came to inspect it. I
see.
believe it was a multi-unit condo. It was 2-story, but it was pretty. You sort of come up over the top of the roof and look at that, and it's like, what? How did that come to be? What collection of architect and framers allowed that to happen?
Yeah, no, I get it. There could have been a few different ways to approach it, I suppose. I mean, you could have used the valley metal itself to kind of wrap the peaks in certain areas just to kind of prevent leak potential. I mean,
I kind of like the idea of that one, if that had been allowed to be a dormer and the top ridge to come all the way across.
Right.
But there's different ways it could have been less challenging and less risky.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It reminds me of finding, for example, skylights essentially right in the center of valley sections, things like that, like where I don't know how the blueprints come out that way, but that seems to be pretty often.
Yeah. We expect a chimney that's wider than 36 inches to have a saddle or a cricket behind it, but for some reason we're allowed to take a 48-inch skylight and just run it straight across the roof and not have any significant means of water deflection, and we expect that to work.
Yeah, well, I mean, gives us a lot of work to do.
I'm
hand.
afraid I will probably always have a job, but I'm very grateful to be able to do that kind of work and help people realize, what kind of things are going to show up in their lifetime.
Yes, of course. I mean, everybody's grateful when they have somebody around who can identify the issues. There's a lot of homeowners or clients, in other words, either don't have the wherewithal to go up there themselves onto the roof or into the attic, or they don't know what they're looking at when it comes to, say, electrical or plumbing and whatnot. So having an expert, somebody who's well versed in these areas, is certainly worth a pretty penny. So
yeah, I believe I concur wholeheartedly. Deficit recognition. It's kind of this odd thing. It's nice and easy to know how it should done, but how it should have been done, but to recognize what's not there, especially when something is missing. You get up onto a roof of a fourplex and there's only 2 plumbing stacks. What happened to the other 2?
Right. It's less often, but I have found them to be coupled in some circumstances, in some cases, but it's rare. And
yeah.
It's important for any roof inspector as well to hop inside the attic, because I've dealt with some clients who've, we had a roof inspector and, they found this and that, but we're still having issues. I asked them, did the roof inspector go inside the attic or at least pop his head into the attic hatch? And they say no a lot of the time. So it's important to inspect the inside and the outside.
Part of that system
the
story.
The description said the ins and outs, I suppose. So in this case, that's...
No, it's great. I think that's one of the reasons my early home inspection career, I didn't recommend anybody to go and do work on houses. People would say, do you have a recommended trade? Do you know a roofer? Do you know a plumber? And I never named names. I got to know Mike through his social media presence and had some conversations. And, you guys are probably the first company that I ever started recommending by name, because I know that you guys do stuff. You guys go into the attic. You guys take a look at the deeper thing. You appreciate that, good enough isn't good enough.
Right.
And so I've always appreciated that. And so I've never had a problem recommending you guys to anybody.
That's terrific to hear. Yeah, Carly is a testament to that as well, actually, considering she does a lot of in-home consultations, and by standard, she does attic inspections as well. And a lot of the times she is finding things that the previous roof inspectors or even previous roof salesmen are not finding, right? So
yeah.
Kudos.
Good job, yeah.
And one thing that she usually always finds is reason for tune-ups in the attic, on the roof, kind of both, all the time. So that was something that you had mentioned before we had streamed, essentially how tune-ups are very common even in new homes.
It was a word that other realtors had never heard a home inspector use before, but a house needs a tune-up. If you're buying a house, you're buying a job. Your car needs a tune-up. We all accept that. But the idea of a roof needing a tune-up, of a furnace needing a tune-up, having that annual inspection, having the work done, that's all just part of owning a house and owning a job. You need to have stuff looked at. And so somewhere along the line, something's going to occur with your roof. Flashing's going to get old. Maybe a vent is going to be broken. Chimney stack works its way loose. It's not the end of the roof. It's not the end of the house. We're not going to throw it away. We're going to do a tune-up, get it to fix back so that it continues to do the job that it's supposed to do.
Right. And even, as you said yourself earlier, even brand new homes, there's always somewhere there's a corner cut or there's something that could be rectified, I guess, to increase longevity of the property itself or whatever.
For sure. You guys, I've seen your videos where you guys are, showing how you're using a nailing gun. You guys are running it, parallel to the roof edge, as opposed to some of those guys that are coming in there roofing and they're like jamming that gun on an angle. And those last couple of the nail head are on an angle. Now the shingles aren't sealing down to one another. Now you've got a place where the wind's going to take those shingles away.
Right.
Maybe not this year, maybe not 7 or 8 years from now. But as the shingles start to get more brittle later on in the life, people aren't going to get the 20 or 25 years that they expect out of the roof shingles unless they're willing to do that tune-up.
Precisely, yeah. We do offer general roof maintenance as well. A lot of the inspections that I do find, I guess, things that would fall under the general maintenance category, like lifted nails or just nails that are just driven, incorrectly, or they are subpar and can, over time, lead to blown off shingles or, leak potential, things like that. So It is a very common thing that I find.
Yeah. And sometimes we get away with it because, there's just not the wind, but sometimes you're on the edge of the coulee looking over the river valley, looking over a park, and the winds just seem to come up, and those homes are especially prone to it.
Right.
And, you come into a house that's 10 years old and somebody's gone through and face nailed right through all the shingles to try and hold them all down because they kept blowing up all the time. So now you've got a 10-year-old roof with, hundreds of holes through the shingles everywhere. So it's a surprise to me at what level of workmanship is acceptable in a lot of new homes.
Right. Yeah, I feel like, that would come down to, I guess, the contractor himself and what kind of I suppose standard he holds over the crews that he's managing. And some of them are fairly loosey-goosey, right? And you could expect a different level of workmanship out of each personnel.
Yeah.
On the roof.
And maybe they don't know what they don't know. Maybe they haven't
Yeah.
gone through the certification processes that you guys have done. Maybe they weren't trained by somebody who actually knew the difference. Where does the nail actually go?
Right.
I think it's amazing that shingle manufacturers had to actually print the nailing space on the nail because so many people were missing it.
Right. That just reminds me actually of a movie. I'm pretty sure it was World Trade Center. Nicolas Cage and I can't remember the other guy. It's a Nicolas Cage movie, but there's a scene of one of his flashbacks, and he's shingling a roof himself, and he's like putting the nails in like 3 inches above the nail line. I'm sitting there as a roofer, like seeing this in a Hollywood movie, like what? Nicolas Cage doesn't know how to roof a roof? Know how to shingle a roof? What?
Imagine that.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah, and sometimes homeowners do their own roofs.
Yeah.
And there used to be guys that would take the first row of 3-tab shingle, and they would turn that upside down to be their starter strip.
Right.
Well, you still don't have your glue strip in the right spot.
Yeah, that's true.
But if you don't know, you don't know.
Trying to save on materials, I suppose, and whatever else. But
yeah,
I mean,
it's great if it's your own home and everything. But if you're sort of flipping a house, as a lot of people do, and then it looks pretty or it looks good enough, it's always kind of disappointing. But it's not that the roof is necessarily going to fail right away. You've just, you've only got a roof that's going to last 12 years instead of 25.
Yeah, exactly. The inspector will come by and ding you if he sees something like that. So
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about, I guess, some of the standard, I guess, points of inspection, I guess, considering, I guess, you do a wide variety of inspections when it comes to home inspections. So what are some of the primary locations for you to check first and foremost?
I like to start up on the roof, and then I work my way down to the floor drain in the basement.
Top to bottom.
It is absolutely top to bottom. I said doing the roof, doing the exterior, 90% of a home inspection is about water, I would say. We want to make sure that if it's things like the roof, that it doesn't get into the house, that the windows are done right, the flashing's done right, the stucco's not crazy, that the grading on the outside of the house works with the gutters to make sure that the water is drained away from the home. And once we're inside the house, then it's all the plumbing and drain lines that all the water stays where it's supposed to again. And it's kind of a joke, but if I can't find evidence of a water leak in a house that's older than 5 years old, probably not looking. But, the fact that life happens and a water thing occurred, that isn't near as big a deal as, say, finding a chronic leak or a plumbing that was not hooked up correctly or something else like that.
Of course, that could cause some more severe damage over time. It could cause rotting in the framing itself. That could pose electrical issues.
Yeah.
And what have you, so.
Yeah. We're pretty lucky here in Calgary that some of the exterior water things, it tends to dry out in between rains. We get away with stuff. But the new acrylic stucco that we've had so many problems with for probably the last decade or so, we used to think of it in BC. They had the leaky condo. That was the big name that everybody knew. And it was just this acrylic stucco is super good at trapping water inside the wall.
I see.
It's so waterproof. It's great on the outside, but if it isn't done right and the water does get in, it can't get out. It doesn't breathe. And so that's when we get some serious rot issues and some really bad, we can end up with structural issues. The house looks perfect from the outside, but then you go around the corner and there's the electrical mast embedded in the stucco, and then there's mushrooms growing out of the side of the electrical mast connection. It's like, all right, we know there's water, and that's what the roots are going in there and it's eating the studs and sucking the water out from there.
Interesting. Yeah, I can't say that I really had any knowledge of this leaky condo, as you put it. But might be something I'd have to look for next time I'm in BC.
I probably predates you a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm a little older than you are.
I think so. I'm not turning gray yet. I know that she's waiting for that though. So she's waiting for the silver fox to
show up.
Not ratting you out. No. Gray looks good on you, Egbert. I can say that.
Thank you,
At
thank you.
least-
It started when I was 18, and I've enjoyed it ever since.
Hey, right on.
Yeah, we'll
Right
call
on.
them wisdom highlights.
Wisdom highlights. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, Milo concurs as well.
Yeah, you like them too?
concurs.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thanks, Milo.
Cool. So why don't we go through some more of these photos here?
Yeah.
We'll start with this one that we got. I think this is I guess some HVAC issue that we have here.
This is a bathroom exhaust fan hookup. So somebody bought, 12 or 15 or maybe even a 10-foot length of that expanding flexible hose, and rather than cut it off to a reasonable length, they sort of tucked up the whole thing. And with those S-bends in there, it really started restricting airflow. And we ended up with a water pool in the upper bend. And eventually it just sort of obstructed airflow entirely. It froze up solid in the middle of winter. So you could turn on the bath fan. It made the right noise. Wasn't doing a darn thing for getting moisture out of the house. We can see that where the bath fan connection at the roof sheathing is, there's a bunch of water staining on that joist up there. So the bath fan connection at the roof sheathing isn't very good. So even when the bath fan did work, we still had water leakage back into the attic space. And then there's one joist space there that's all white and frosty.
Right. Yeah, you can see that.
So yeah, you got just a really localized area of frost accumulation. So we know that moisture's leaking into the attic, probably somewhere down low. It's always that question, what's the source of that water? But we just don't want water in the attic.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy that you added this photo, only because this is a very common thing that I find myself as well. Term I use usually ptrap, I think is
Sounds
more
perfect.
of a plumbing application, I suppose. But right, I mean, with excess moisture inside the pipe, it could pool, at the bottom part of the S bend, as you put it, and as you said, freezes. Sometimes the ice can expand and crack the flex hose, and then the only thing stopping a major leak is the actual sleeve itself.
Yeah.
And no, unfortunately, it is something that we find very, very often.
Yeah.
And as for the exhaust portion of it, you can see in this photo as well, they use like a plastic flange of some sort to essentially just anchor the pipe up into the exhaust vent. But those areas are a lot less than airtight. And it can leak a lot of humidity and moisture into the attic space, and obviously resulting in all the frost that you're seeing, large amounts of ice and water damage to the insulation just below that area. And, right. No, you know it as well as I do. It's definitely a problem.
The whole idea that you can use an old election sign plastic cardboard as a sealant to try and hope that the air gets directed outside is a little optimistic. Let's go with that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I would understand it more so if we were closer to the equator. I mean, but with the fluctuations we get in temperature and the extreme winters we get, it's not worth it.
No.
Of course not. Airtight is very important.
So I'm going to recommend anybody, if you're doing your own bathroom fan install, and that's within the scope of many homeowners to be able to do that, there should be a nice horizontal run after the bathroom fan before it goes up and into the attic space and connects up to the roof. And that horizontal run is a place where water can pool and collect and be more quickly evaporated by the bathroom fan without so much blockage. So you'll find a lot of the manufacturer's instructions, if all else fails, read the instructions, say put in that horizontal line. You'll get 18 to 30 inches and then bring your pipe up and towards the roof sheathing.
Right. Luckily, that is something we find. If we find excessive length, we will shorten that to try to keep it not too long. I give it, say, like, sometimes I've seen bath fan here and the exhaust port of the gooseneck like 13 feet away.
Yeah.
That's when we run into some problems. We'll start to relocate the gooseneck in that case. But
yeah, definitely. That's great.
Right. I mean, sometimes we find, installed, or I guess HVAC systems installed properly, yet we have less than airtight seals at the top, less than airtight seals at the fan itself too. So moisture issues almost all the time. It's more common for me to find systems like this than it is, I find, systems that are non-faulty.
In the last 6 or 7 years, more of the better builders are putting in the goosenecks that have got a tailpiece extension into the attic. And they're making good positive connections, and they're being really deliberate about making sure there is no air leakage into the attic.
Yeah, exactly. Primex is a good brand for that, as well as Duraflow. They make adapters or inserts, whichever
Oh, yeah.
you'd prefer, that essentially will clip into the base of the gooseneck to provide that pipe fixture, essentially to create airtight seals with the HVAC or with the flex hose itself. So
I didn't know that. Thank
right,
you.
yeah, Primex is a good brand. Their system is a little different because they only have one size adapters, say like 4, 6, 8, that you have to remove or replace to the size you need. But the Duraflow goosenecks, they have multi-sized adapters essentially, where they have like it's kind of like a 4 and then 6 and then 8, or I mean, you could attach any size pipe to their adapter. So we've been moving more towards Duraflow.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
It's good to see.
So when people are going to buy a house and I'm finding this problem, I thought the solution was a new gooseneck, but you're suggesting that there's an insert that they could retrofit if it was the right kind of gooseneck?
If they have the pre-existing gooseneck that can accommodate the adapter, that's right. Because we find the old tin goosenecks a lot of the time they have no system.
Oh yeah, no.
You know, but usually the plastic ones that you'd find are either Primex or Duraflow, and either can accommodate the adapters that we would need. So it does save the client some money when we have to create these airtight seals. We can use the pre-existing gooseneck and just install the adapters.
Nice. I got a little research to do when I get home. Thank you.
Duraflow
Never
and
too old to
Primex
learn.
are top brands. Okay, well, let's move on to the next one. Right, we went over this photo. That was I'm glad that wasn't me on that roof. That'd be no fun. Okay, what do we have here? What'd you find this time?
So this is just it's a security attachment point or tether point for the roofers that are up there doing the work. What surprised me was just how few nails. Nice to meet you, Lila.
Yeah,
let's go down.
Holy man!
So I was just surprised at how few nails were installed within this component. So I mean, how many guys were tied in? What was the risk? Again, it's not necessarily relevant to the home inspection, but it just, I hope that everybody who's going to do work on that roof later on and attaches to that point, they know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be worthwhile for the homeowner to just know that this permanent anchor point is less than attached, I guess, right?
Yeah.
You could say the anchor point could use a top-up. Or, sorry, tune-up.
A tune-up on your anchor point?
I'm always thinking top-up. I'm thinking insulation here. Tune-up in this case.
Tune-up for sure.
Right. Okay. I find that pretty often too, and I do see like the sling type or the fabric kind of wrapped around the truss.
Yeah,
I feel
still left over and stuck out underneath the shingles.
Yeah, some that I find I just left in the attic as well. Sometimes I guess they'll just detach them and leave them in the attic. I find a lot of debris in the roof as well. A lot of shingle wrappers and things like that all the time.
Yeah.
I sometimes clear it out for the client. Okay, this is also something I find fairly often as well.
Yeah, especially in those older bungalows where the house was never built with a bathroom exhaust fan, but somebody wanted to add one in, and then they just didn't know that it needed to actually be vented to the outside. Or when they grew up, their house always had this, so they never worried about it. But yeah, taking all that warm, moist air out of your bathroom from a shower and then dumping it into your freezing cold attic in the middle of winter is just the perfect way to create an attic rain scenario.
Precisely. If only we were a little closer to the equator, like I said. But in this case, we'd have livable attic spaces. That'd be that'd be pretty cool. I've yet to be inside a home that has an actual attic space. Like, in my opinion, the type that you'd see in the movies where you go up into the attic and have a loft or something of that sort.
That's part of the whole challenge with having a system and having your vapor barriers going in through all the different floor levels, knee wall levels, ceiling levels. It's particularly challenging to do that kind of work with new construction nowadays. The old ones, the old houses, the wind blew through them. There was no worry about moisture accumulation inside the walls. Now, if we seal them up and they're tight, any potential leak can be a real place for moisture to accumulate. So it's really pretty important to try and make sure the vapor barrier is intact. Not something we can inspect during a house, but it's really important when you're doing a home renovation that you're careful with all that stuff.
Certainly, yeah. In this case, I'm seeing like an aluminum flex hose. What it looks like.
I think so.
Non-insulated as
non-insulated.
Well. This was found in Calgary.
Yep. Yeah. And then I'm not sure whether they adapted a dryer exhaust. I'm surprised they even bothered to put a vent on there at all.
Yeah.
But maybe they just thought, next time we change our shingles, that's when we'll bump it outside. My crystal ball doesn't tell me what they were thinking anymore. So I don't know.
I understand. Well, they will have quite the wake-up call, I guess, when the time comes.
Yep.
Oh, next photo. Okay. FLIR 1. We also use FLIR device. Very, very handy.
It is, yeah. So in this case, I was looking at, judging by its shape, it was probably a bathroom exhaust fan vent. But the fingers of air up towards the top were sort of that indication that the connection was imperfect. Lots of times, if the connection is poor enough, then we see the water staining, we can see the rot in the sheathing. We know we can see dryer lint coming out of it if it's a poor dryer connection.
Right.
Today I saw one that had icicles hanging from it. It's only been cold for 2 days, and we've got icicles hanging down inside the attic spaces already. But with the FLIR camera, it can give me a really much better idea, especially with a new install, where say the previous vent connection was good. The roofers had come in, so the roof was only 1 or 2 years old. We might not have physical evidence that's visual, but the FLIR camera allows me to see the consequences of that air leak, so we can see where the heat shows up.
Of course. Yeah, in this case, I'm seeing also just a less than airtight seal at the fan itself as well. You can see it starting to kind of seep its way through the insulation.
Yeah, it would be great if insulators actually put the same amount of insulation on top of the bathroom fan box as they did beside the bathroom fan box.
Right.
But for some reason, they seem to think that installing a perfectly horizontal level of insulation throughout is effective. And then when the bathroom fan box is poorly insulated, then it's cold. So then I have high humidity inside the house, or at least in the bathroom. It's getting up inside that vapor barrier, and now you're getting condensation inside that vapor barrier space.
If there is vapor barrier space, because a lot of the time I don't find poly boots over top of the bath fans, and if they are, sometimes they're just plopped on top. No vapor barrier tape, no Acoustiseal, no real seal at all.
Nope.
So I mean, yeah, it's a hit and miss a lot of the times during these inspections.
Optimism is a really poor technique for effective housing.
Yeah, of course.
But you can it's a tune-up situation, right?
What has gone into this podcast dog today?
Yes. No.
My
You're
love.
lovely.
You are a real pain in the neck today. Might have to give her a treat. Excuse the podcast dog, our lovely audience. Anyways, Egbert, where were you?
Yeah, it's a tune-up situation, right?
Right.
You can peel the insulation back, push it out of the way. You can clean it up. You can put down some tape. You can seal that up and make sure that you don't have leakage in that scenario. It's not a what's the word I'm looking for? It's not that the house isn't worth buying because it's got this imperfection. Do the tune-up on it. Make it work for you.
Of course, yeah. Increase the longevity of the house itself. The what's the word? We're both struggling to find the word down here. I suppose what I'm saying is increase the longevity of the components inside the attic as well. The sheathing, the roof itself, things like that, all can be become deteriorated much quicker when you have air leaks like this. So tune-ups are certainly important when it comes to these attic applications. All right, what do we got? Oh, the good old dryer vent plugged up, hey?
Yeah. So this may not have been in Calgary. So we have a sort of the original house. It was done with the rafters and space plank sheathing, and then they built an addition off perpendicular to it. And the old dryer vent, what used to go through the roof, or they tried to make it go through the roof, and now it ends up inside the attic space. And they, through a multitude of sins, they managed to get it all plugged up to boot. So yeah,
that could be a bit of a fire hazard as well. Fire hazard, and it's not uncommon for me to find a lot of black mold in these areas where you have dryer vent exhaust. That's less than airtight, but same goes for bath fan exhaust as well. A lot of the time it's there's evidence of mold, a lot of water staining, of course.
Mold takes 3 things to grow: food, heat, and water.
Yeah.
Loves everything we build a house out of. Loves all the same temperatures we do. So the only thing we can do is control the moisture. And if you don't, mold's going to happen.
Of course.
Yeah.
This is also something I find
fun,
more often than not.
Yeah. Going up into an attic and looking for the roof ventilation, seeing where they've cut the hole through the roof, but it didn't match the size of the vent. So most of those turtlebacks, they're kind of rated for 50 net square inches, I think, of free space. But in this case, they took that out and wanted to replace it with the turbine vent. And again, the turbine vent needs a larger hole. And so as much as they think they were improving their ventilation, they've really choked it down by not cutting that hole bigger.
Yeah, the outward appearance is that you've got, increased ventilation, but in this case, not doing too much more. I mean, the whirlybirds themselves will create more of a vacuum effect, but then again, yeah, the hole itself needs to be, I think, at least 12 by 12 inches or so. We install the Duraflow Pro ventilators more often, but as for the base, they are fairly similarly sized. But in this case, yeah, I mean.
So yeah, I like the ones that you guys install because they're taller. They get up out of the snow. Some of those are really much more effective. I've gone to roofs and the whirlybird has disappeared. There's just this 12-inch hole in the roof now.
Yeah, there's a few issues with them. I mean, they're fairly soft metal as well, so there's no chance they could really stand up to a hailstorm of any degree. And they're mechanical as well, so they seize fairly easily as well. And I mean, just in the last inspection I had, they were asking about it just squeaking and squeaking and squeaking, luckily still spinning. But as soon as that thing seizes, that's an entry point for any rain for that matter as well. So we kind of shy away from the whirlybirds nowadays because the climate that we're in doesn't suit them too well. So
no, they're not the best solution here in Calgary for sure. I do remember getting up once in the middle of the night, finding a ladder and a roll of duct tape, dealing with my whirlybird and going back to sleep because of the noise.
Right. Yeah. Whirlybirds, yeah, noisy. But another thing clients ask about a lot, well, they're not sure what it is. They think there's a bird pecking away or something. And then again, it's the damper inside of the gooseneck.
Okay.
A lot of the time, those tin goosenecks have the tin dampers and they tick, tick, tick when it's windy enough. Or even the polyurethane goosenecks like the Primex or what have you. They're also just flapping in the wind. People think there's issues, and then I have to try to tell them that's the proper function. It's a good sign the damper is installed, but if we remove it, you can get a draft down into the home and whatever else. So that's just another.
Yeah, and that's part of the whole house as a system scenario. If you've got a balanced or a situation in which the air pressure in the house is changing too much, then you kind of got the wind on one side and the house pressure in the other, and the things go back and forth, and it just makes it easier for the dampers to start moving.
Right.
And you don't want to put in so much of a spring that your damper can't open when you do need it to. But yeah, I've seen people tape them closed, seen people rip them out, different crazy scenarios.
Yeah, just for the audience, leave the dampers installed on your bath fan exhaust units, but dryer exhaust a lot of the time is exhausted through a gooseneck, and in that case, the grill. I mean, the damper is important too. I apologize, I got myself a little mixed up. The dampers are important on any application. What I'm saying is the grill. Sorry, is what I meant. Inside of the gooseneck, the grill can be installed for the bath fan exhaust. When it comes to the dryer exhaust, it can very easily clog up with dryer lint and completely plug up the entire system.
Right.
Also.
Right. I have a main floor laundry. Love it. Having a dryer exhaust on the roof, I'm capable of getting up onto the roof and cleaning that on a regular basis. Most homeowners don't even know that it's up there. A dryer vent is, you're buying a house, you're buying a job. Your dryer vent needs to be cleaned once in a while. So how many homeowners know that they need to get up onto their roof and start cleaning the dryer vent off? It plugs up solid. Now your dryer takes 3 hours to dry a couple of shirts instead of 15 or 20 minutes.
Right.
You're wasting money, you're wasting energy, and you're creating a fire hazard with a solid blocked up filled.
Yeah, that's
dryer
right.
vent.
Yeah, tune-up certainly required. I think more modern homes exhaust out the side. I'm not sure if that's just specifically modern homes versus older homes, but a lot of the time it is out the side. I'm not sure if that has anything to do with dryer placement or.
It's probably got a lot to do with dryer placement. We see a lot of the side-by-side duplexes where they're still going up through the roof.
Right.
Lots of those infills up through the roof, and those roofs are so tall. I occasionally have to go out and rent a taller ladder because my regular ladder won't reach them. And so, I'm just trying to imagine a homeowner, going down to Home Depot, getting a 40-foot ladder, trying to get it up to their roof, trying to get up just so that they can clean a dryer vent as part of their annual or at least semi-annual maintenance.
Right. Well, for anyone else listening, the Metal Tech ladder series that you can get at Home Depot, those are very handy. We use Metal Tech ladders. Mine is, I think, 15.5 feet.
Okay.
And I'll say 8 times out of 10, I'm able to access the upper peak or the main roof section with that telescopic ladder too. So you can save a few bucks. They're just under $500, but very, very robust and very compactable. And they're light as well, because if I can't reach the main roof section, I can get myself up onto the garage and pull the ladder up to the garage section and up onto the next level. So yeah, Metal Tech. A little plug for Metal Tech, I guess.
There you go. I have one of those ladders as well. It's so nice to be able to take it in through the house and be able to go up in the attic and not have to worry about dragging a 12-foot thing, banging into walls everywhere. So that's absolutely a great component.
Yeah, certainly I use those for the attic inspections constantly, right? So this is more of a flat roof application.
Yeah, so this might be a little hard for people to interpret. It's actually the outside of the parapet on a flat roof. The box is part of the scupper system. So again, when the roof drains, it goes into the scupper and then from the scupper down into a downspout. And I'm just overwhelmed that this was, new quality construction.
Right.
They tried to tie in their torch in. They didn't, seal the parapet wall connections that are in there. I don't even know what was hanging out from underneath the parapet wall cap. That black stripe that goes up in there. It was just somebody goes in to buy a $1.5 million infill, and they're getting this wreck in I don't know. It's just waiting to happen.
I've done some work around some of the similar components. There have been some flat sections to some of the roofs that we've done.
Sure.
And no, I think even compared to some of the others that I've seen, this is pretty subpar.
It was this is beyond tune-up. This is you need to call somebody. This needs to be torn out and redone. It's not really a salvageable situation. It was somebody who was well beyond their skill set attempting to do a roof that they just weren't qualified to do.
Right. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, when it comes to, I guess, trying to repair this area itself, you might have to cut back the poly or rubber, I suppose, in this case, and just try to wrap it, seal it. I don't know.
I don't know if they were trying to use a self-sealing membrane or a torch on, and of course you can't get your torch in that tight. It was just the whole thing was not designed well, wasn't executed well, and it really put a lot of risk for a lot of water to be put into the structure of the wall. And
that's unfortunate for the buyer.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But do you know if this was rectified at some point? Or
my understanding is they did buy the home.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
but at least they were aware of what size of a job that they were buying.
That's because they likely had a conversation with Diamond Home, and you had told them that a tune-up is worthwhile, that they're buying a job.
Anytime you're buying a house,
right?
You're buying a job for sure. And I'm pretty sure I told them this was beyond tune-up, that this was a significant repair.
I see.
And so then it's up to the realtors to decide what they want to do. That's their thing. They can decide what their price is going to be, what negotiations are going on with it. A home inspection is never a pass-fail scenario. I don't know what your comfort level is. I don't know what your skill set is. I don't know what your financial situation is. Maybe you want to buy the house and tear it down. I don't know. So my job is to help you understand what is the condition of the house right now.
Right.
And from there, you can decide if that's what you want to take on or not. And and so like I said, we always find stuff. Doesn't matter whether it's new or used. I find stuff, and that's okay. A house is a design compromise, and then it's built by imperfect people with imperfect materials. And that's okay. Nothing in life is ever perfect. But is it going to do its job well enough, long enough, or is it going to require way more tune-ups, way more frequently than another house next door?
Well said. You never really know.
Nope.
It's a bit of a dice roll, I suppose. That's where they call in the experts, right?
We have a question.
We do have a question. All right, Carly.
Somebody asked.
You can always move the microphone too, It's silly. Oh, this one's a little bit stiff.
Yeah, I was going to say.
There we go.
What aspects of a home can't be inspected during an inspection?
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. So the simplest answer is if it's visible, it's inspectable. So ideally, it's anything that's readily accessible. So I can't see inside a furnace chimney, but I can certainly see parts of the furnace chimney immediately in the furnace room. I can see parts of the chimney above the roof line, so we can do some of that. We can see a limited amount of the foundation above the ground, so we get a chance to see that. If the basement's undeveloped, we might get more of a chance to see some of the foundation, at least the concrete foundation walls. If we're lucky, we can see the posts. We can make sure that they're plumb and in the right place and still where they're supposed to be. But there's always risks that there's something that we're not going to be able to see.
I'm sorry about this dog, Egbert. Man,
He likes me.
Mila is.
I think she'll go upstairs.
She's usually a lot more relaxed.
Yeah, it's the first
I don't know.
podcast she's been all worked
It must
up
be.
in.
It might be the cologne, something. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is,
I
but
don't know.
she's a little bit extra today.
Just push her, yeah.
Sorry to
think she's
distract
gonna
you
go
so much.
upstairs.
That's all right. I do like pets.
We had designated her as the podcast dog because she's been fairly relaxed
Oh.
and fairly tolerable. But today's a little different. I guess dogs have their days as
Full
well.
moon or something.
Yeah, for sure. Was that, did I answer the question sufficiently?
In-
So if they text back, we can figure it out?
With the knowledge I have, I think it was answered
All
well
right.
if I was asking it.
Yeah.
But they'll reply if they have any more questions.
Sure,
about
great.
it.
Great.
I'm just gonna add to that. I'm not sure if you mentioned it. This is just off the top of my head, but the foundation of the home itself, I wonder, because if it is a finished basement, for example, it wouldn't be noticeable.
Right.
Then again, from the exterior, not noticeable. But if there is, say, widespread cracking in the foundation, things like that, I wonder if there's a way to inspect that.
There's almost always a crack in the foundation. You could say that there's two kinds of concrete, that which has cracked, that which will.
Yeah.
And again, it's Calgary. We get away with cracks. There are rules around how much damp proofing needs to be done on the outside of the concrete so the water just doesn't simply, migrate through. But a crack is Calgary. They're mostly just hairline cracks. They tend to be more when the concrete cures, that it shrinks a little bit. Maybe they added too much water in the mix or something down the road. That's where it happens. But those cracks are most at risk for water penetration.
I see.
And so if you can get your grading done right, then you're not going to be holding water up against your foundation. The crack is less of a risk. If your downspouts are located in the right location, again, works with the grading to make sure that all the water is directed away from the foundation of the home.
Makes sense.
I had a home inspection done by a third party when we bought our home. They identified a crack. They identified grading issues. I said, yep, I see that all the time. And then 2 years later, I had water coming in through a crack in the foundation because of some freak rain that we had a couple of years back, where it just happened to be in that particular angle. It got between the houses. And so it happens. I love to tell jokes. You take a hole in the middle of a field, you call it a well, and you expect it to fill up with water. You dig a square hole in the city, you call it a basement, you expect it to stay dry. You can't have both ways.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
So you've got to make sure that you do everything possible to keep your foundation dry, that you do all those different components and things. And the newer homes, they've gotten better about installing a dimpled membrane on the outside that's better at controlling water. Newer homes have got other systems. You've got the weeping tile around the outside that's designed to collect it. So again, you don't have that buildup of static water pressure outside your foundation.
Well, I'm happy that I asked. I certainly learned a thing. Carly and I had lived in a home in ranch lands for about a year or so, and yeah, the foundation wept and wept. It wept and wept, and yeah, they were horizontal cracks throughout the entire, I guess, furnace room. And
Okay.
It seemed like every time it rained, so that was in very
flooded?
poor condition. Yeah. Oh, and yeah, the drain in the furnace room bubbled up and flooded the basement. We got out of that place pretty quick.
Good choices. Good
But
choices.
that was just
Yeah.
that's why I kind of asked about the foundation cracking
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, horizontal cracking is different. So yeah, most cracking, it kind of shows up at the corner of windows. We've got this diagonal or maybe a vertical crack. Horizontal cracks we're starting to deal with external pressure from the outside that's pushing in the concrete. Those are far more concerning.
I'm glad that I was not the owner of that house.
There you go.
But if I do intend on purchasing a home, hopefully within the next couple of years, I have an idea who we might have to give a call to. Diamond Home? I think
Yeah.
so. I think so too. Okay, we got one more photo left
All right.
in this,
Collection
and this
of
is my
stuff.
personal favorite of the photos that
Right.
I saw beforehand.
New home.
Yeah, a new home and totally improper lapped flashing, or no lap for that matter.
I suspect that they shingled the roof and then later on they put the electrical in. And so the electrical guys dropped in their flashings for their masts and said, it's not my job. And nobody else came along and said, hey, this is somebody's job to come back and do it. Now, I'm not going to name names, but I did the 1-year home inspection on this roof. They did get a home inspection when they purchased the house originally as a new home, and this never showed up.
Wow.
I was just standing on the deck when I could see this, and you could certainly see it from the second story window.
And you didn't see it on the first report.
And it was not in the first report.
Goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it were the electricians who, said, well, it was the electricians who said, not my job, that could be very easily just tucked underneath the shingle right above it, just to at least
Try.
do something to it. And they didn't. It's not my job. No,
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate response to that situation. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping there was no internal water damage or anything of that nature. But
It had only been a year, so there was not too much water in there. The one, so this was again another semi-detached. The one, there was a little bit of water that had followed down the mast and got into the electrical panel. Not necessarily enough to compromise the whole thing, but outside of my expertise, it gets to points like you got water in your electrical panel. Now you need a very specific electrical inspection.
right, I'd say water and electricity don't really go
No,
too well
no.
together.
I'm a great generalist. I have a vast breadth of knowledge on a lot of different things,
Right.
but my depth only goes so far. I just
A great generalist. I love that. I can't say I've heard that before. That's a good one.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a sad day for the electrical flashing department, unfortunately. The electrical flashing could use a tune-up. Let's put it that way.
Tune-ups. They're always tune-ups. And it's not hard, but somebody's got to actually do it, and somebody's got to care enough during construction that things get done right or
Yeah,
well
of
enough.
course.
So,
I'm not sure.
but an electrician isn't a roofer. They may have never actually put a mast through a roof that had shingles on it before. I don't know.
Right. I mean, considering how fluent I am in the roofing process, it still kind of blows my mind just how undereducated people are when it comes to the roofing systems and things, right? Because it just seems so second nature. And I mean, things are lapped a proper way, and all that. But like some people just right over their head, and it's seemingly less, less understood than I thought.
And did a home inspection on a house. They apparently said, "Oh yeah, no, the guy was a finishing carpenter. Everything's gonna perfect." Yeah, and you get on the roof, and it's like, why are the first 3 rows lapped the wrong direction?
Yeah, strange. And like I said, not even Nicolas Cage himself knows how to roof, man. So
There you go. There
Is
you
what
go.
it is. Well, I'm happy that you brought these photos with you, Egbert, because some of those things we see ourselves pretty often, and the fact that you have a similar understanding in those systems is important for sure. And you obviously inspect things way outside of our capabilities as well, which is obviously I commend you for that as well, having the generalized knowledge, as you put. If you had to pick, say, your favorite aspect to inspect, I mean, it might be hard to pick favorites, but what do you find more enjoyable, I guess, when it comes to a home inspection?
I really like doing decks because they are both so, it's the classic thing that homeowners like to do on their own. And there is such a wide, the joke is there's such a wide variety of ways to do it incorrectly. So to try and understand how did that get to be the way that it is, and what's the easiest way to help them get that tune-up done so that they can keep the deck without having to totally rip it down and start all over. So, and again, part of that is the safety aspect. You and your kids and your family are all going to be out on that deck having dinner. So we want it to be a safe and enjoyable place for you. And so that's where that gives me great satisfaction to be able to help people maintain something that's so beautiful and useful to them and still keep the safety up without having to rip it down and start all over.
Of course. I could imagine, having, I guess what I'm saying is I understand the importance behind a properly built deck, because that can really be dangerous for those who are using the deck. If you, like you said, having a family on the deck, having a barbecue, say, and if it's not the way it should be, it could be very dangerous for all of them.
Yeah. And it's, the joke is, and I love a joke, if you're going to build a deck that's big enough for 50 people, it has to be strong enough for 50 people. I was like, well, I don't plan on having 50 people on my deck. And it's like, well, when did deck collapses make the news? Wedding photos, graduation parties, housewarming parties. It's not that we plan to have 50 people and overload our deck, but it's going to happen sometime, especially when everybody's posing for a photo and you got all, 4 tiers of people lined up on a set of stairs. So You've got to build it for the worst case scenario. We build our roofs and we shingle our roofs for those worst case scenarios. How many days of the year do we actually need the shingles to be waterproof? But there's those days that we do. And so that's why we build it that way, right? We want it to work. We want it to be glued down so that it's capable of handling the winds that Calgary gets in the middle of winter. We want our roofs to drain so that we don't end up with those ice dams that back us stuff up. And we build for those worst case scenarios. People are like, oh, do I have to have that ice and water shield at the bottom lower edge? No, but you sure want it when you need it.
That's a good way to put it. Better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
Considering the climate that we're in, that is obviously a huge factor when it comes to building code and the kind of materials you would use during a re-roof. So the ice and water shield is extremely important. And depending on the pitch of the roof itself, that could be an underlayment used throughout the entirety of the roof. Yeah. Specifically for lower pitches. From what we know from the products that we use, anything that's 412 and under would require an ice and water peel and stick underlayment to be used throughout the entirety of the house. So
yeah, and it's amazing how few times we see that. And they're like, well, how can you tell? Well, just go into the attic. Look at where the roof vents are cut in. Look at where the other various points are. We can go in and we can see that there is no membrane underneath that roof. And they're like, oh, we only need that at 212 and less. No.
Maybe. Calgary is a bit of a niche, I think, when it comes to the weather that we get and the climate that we have here. So, I know that there's kind of a copy and paste throughout the entirety of Alberta, but I think things should be made a little bit more specific in the Calgary area and surrounding areas. But we don't see that yet, unfortunately. For example, considering our proximity to the mountains, we saw such a huge fluctuation in temperature because of the Chinooks that we get, and the fact that we're still in the plains. Technically, we went from negative 35 to plus 10 overnight, and I don't think we had the same issue anywhere else in Alberta, but we saw that in Calgary. So for that reason, when it came to attic ventilation, the units that are used, say insulation depth and what the minimum should be, things like that should be very specific to Calgary. But we should start a petition, I suppose.
For sure. Code is the cheapest, most unsafe you are legally allowed to build a home.
Right. Yeah.
It is not a goal to strive for. It is a base from which you can build up. Yeah. And so, design your roof so you don't end up with a snowdrift. Design your roof so that if there is a snowdrift, it's not going to block up all the water and end up, backing up underneath your shingles. There's lots of things that we do that are just kind of crazy, and we get away with it for 20 years, and then somewhere along the line, something backs up, shows up, causes a problem, and then it's a catastrophe for everybody that's involved.
Right. Right. Well, you said it best, no doubt. So, just to cap off, say, the business side of this conversation, I'm curious as to whether or not you have any specific tips for homeowners, I guess, when it comes to things that they could easily inspect themselves, say, without, say, specific expertise, but if there is anything that they could inspect themselves, that would be, I guess, beneficial for them to understand, I suppose.
So one great thing is to hire a home inspector who lets you come with them. There are some home inspectors that don't. So I encourage everybody to come along. If you hire me, you're going to get an education, you're going to get a joke show, and you're going to get a really good home inspection. I want you to have a house that you enjoy and can work on. So it's about, here's an air intake vent. You need to make sure this is kept clean. And I'm inspecting to see if it's clean. Same thing. You got a furnace. You need to have your furnace filter changed. You also need to take the cover off your furnace so that you can look inside to see, are there scorch marks? Is there water leaking? Is there disconnected anything? So you can get a good home inspector. Even if you've lived in your house for 10 years, get a home inspector to come in and show you at once. And you can understand what it is. And then you can be able to go through and back and do it yourself. There's great information on YouTube. There's a lot of information on YouTube. Some of that information is good. And so, knowing who you need to listen to and know what needs to be going on. So again, get some education, whether that's from a book, whether that's from the YouTube, whether that's from hiring a third party like a home inspector to come through and help you show what's going on. And then you get something that's really specific to your house. Because again, the house is a system. And so you might have a furnace that's got this kind of a humidifier connected to it, and maybe you've got that kind of a thermos, and then there's the ventilation fan that's connected with it. Maybe you've got the heat recovery ventilator as well. The book isn't necessarily going to be very effective at explaining how these different components all work together. And so, maybe you just talk to your HVAC expert when they're coming in to do their annual inspection. What do I look for? What do I do? That's my strongest suggestion, is get somebody who can help you with the specifics of your house, and then take that and repeat it over and over again.
Well said. Words from the wise, I'd say. That's a great word of advice. No doubt about it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've heard a lot in terms of inspections, things that you are professional at. I'm curious. I'm sure everyone else is curious now. Egbert behind the scenes.
Sure.
Right? So outside of work, what are some of your biggest hobbies, passions? Like what are your, what gets you going outside of work?
My wife and I bought ocean kayaks. So
Great.
They're 17 foot long enclosed kayaks. Why would you buy an ocean kayak in the prairies? It's a great question. So we've had the opportunity to go expedition camping. So there's a Bowron Lakes canoe circuit. And so for 12 days, we loaded up our kayaks and did this 120 some odd kilometer circuit through a bunch of lakes and rivers and camping along the way. Spent 2 weeks out there fishing, and it was just awesome. So yeah, if I'm not up on a roof, I like to be out on the water.
Yeah, great. Explain these kayaks. So you said like an enclosed.
It is an enclosed kayak.
So it has
Sorry,
How
yeah.
would
So
you
it's just
describe it,
a kayak. So there are these open sit-on top kayaks that lots of
Right.
people like to go fishing with. This is sort of the traditional when you think of the Inuit kayaks. They're enclosed all the way around. They've got hatches on them, so we can store all of our goods inside of them.
Okay, I see.
And so, if you're good enough, and I'm not, you can actually learn to roll a kayak.
Right.
I haven't mastered that yet. Maybe one day. But yeah, it's just nice. So if it's rains, all of our equipment is still inside. We can go down the river, the waves splash and everything. It's not a big deal. All our camping gear will be inside, and we can just pull up on the shore somewhere and set up camp. And dehydrated food.
Yeah. Mountain house.
I tried to
one
dehydrate my own, actually. Yeah,
That's
quite enjoy it.
terrific. Do you have a system yourself that you use? Or?
We do. We've got a nice tray system from that we bought at probably at Cabela's.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, so it's a seven tray system, or maybe it's 6. Yeah, so we've done everything from made our own beef jerky, drying fruit. I like to cook, so I mean, whatever I cook, I just make a whole bunch extra, and then we just dehydrate our own meals. So we go out there, you got Thai green curry, a sauce that we've dehydrated, and we just cook the rice and add the sauce to it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Is this a system that you fit inside your own oven, or does it have its own enclosure?
It's a
dehydrating?
freestanding box. And yeah, it's got a door that pulls down just like a little oven, and there's 6 trays, I guess, that pull out. And so it's got a fan built into it, it's got a heater built into it, so you can just put it in there and let it go for somewhere between 6 and 12 hours, depends on what you're drying and how moist it was when it started.
Great, yeah, that would be, I think, something that I would look into as well, because I have made my own beef jerky in the past. It's more biltong,
Okay.
I guess, essentially similar, just thicker. Just been using the oven, at a low setting with the door propped open slightly, and it takes a hell of a long time.
It can, yeah.
So if I were to buy something like that,
Yeah.
I feel like it'd save me some time in the long run.
Yeah.
And when it comes to, we spoke about emergency preparedness when you first got here. So using something like this kind of system would help to increase stored goods, things of that nature. So
Yeah,
seems
for
like a
sure.
worthwhile purchase.
No, you said when food goes on sale, apples are available at a great price for a part of the year. Dry it and then just use that snack all through the year. So I'm Dutch. I'm frugal.
Right.
Some people would say I'm cheap. That's okay. So like I said, get the dehydrator going, and I can just enjoy those apples at any time.
Right. That's a healthy snack. That's no doubt about that. I like your demeanor. I love just how comedic you are, because like the first thing you said to me when you showed up was like, you got any jokes for me? Or like, let's have a joke. And I actually said, gonna have to talk to Carly, because my recall for jokes is not that great. I've heard quite a few. I maybe only know a couple, and they're not very safe for the camera, I suppose. But I commend you for your comedic effect. No doubt
It's
about
home inspections can be stressful for people, and I like to help them settle down into a place where the things that I'm telling them aren't adding to their stress. It's my job to help them just feel a little bit more comfortable with what's going on, and appreciate, like I said, every house is going to need a tune-up. And so if I can help them to just realize that a tune-up isn't catastrophic, that there's always going to be that stuff, and even though that it's a 37-page report when they're done, that's not a it's not a catastrophic end of the deal situation.
Right.
And sometimes it's easiest to explain a concept. The concept of a home can be, it's a design compromise. Well, what is a design compromise? I said, well, you can have a house that's energy efficient, or you can have a house with doors and windows. And so that helps people to appreciate that, everything in house is a trade-off. There's no such thing as one perfect house.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
I guess to go off of what you said, if you want those big, massive front windows taking up, say, 90% of the front of the house, that'll have its drawbacks in other ways, or it'll affect other parameters within the home.
Yeah, it can be great for letting in the sunshine, but in the middle of winter, in the middle of summer, it can let in a lot of sunshine. It can be pretty hot.
Right, of course.
Yeah, so it just all depends on what you want, what's important to you. Some people, they're not particularly worried about that. Some people, it's like it's always cold standing next to a window, so they don't. Now all of a sudden you want to go to triple pane windows. Well, now you're talking tens of thousands of dollars more just on that one wall, just for the upgrade.
Tit for tat, I suppose, in the long run.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I feel like I've learned a lot. I know the rest of us have as well. You've been very fluent in your descriptions, and I'm happy that you've spent the time to come here and talk with us. I'm sure that our audience is also happy about that. It's been a great podcast.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, outside, I guess Milo is a little bit riled up this time around. She's a little bit excited about you.
Maybe I should have taken her for a walk before we started the podcast.
Yeah, no, that would have been a good idea. We ran her into the ground last night. We were gone for almost an hour and a half walking her, and I guess that really didn't do much. She woke up and she's a husky and she's wired. So
yep, that's what they're born and bred to do. So lots of energy.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate your patience in that field. And as for the audience, we appreciate your patience as well. We had a bit of a technical slip up in the beginning. Like I said, it was my fault, but that didn't really damper the experience whatsoever. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And Egbert, thank you for being here. Carly, thanks for running tech.
Thanks, Carly.
You've been great. Daniel, thank you as well.
Hey, Daniel, have you got a joke?
Oh,
nobody's got
Carly,
jokes today.
come on. Yeah. Give me the one you gave me this morning.
I don't remember it.
What?
What?
Remember what has 4 letters?
That's okay.
Okay, come on, you can do it.
I remember it. Oh, it's what has 4 letters, occasionally has 12 letters, but never has 5 letters.
Wow.
Well, now you know. But it's not really a joke because you have to understand it.
More of a riddle.
More of a riddle.
It's like what is 4 letters, WH.
Ah.
Occasionally
Nice.
has 12 letters.
Occasionally has 12.
Never has 5.
Never.
Never has 5.
She got me with that. Stumped me for quite a while.
Yeah, it definitely got me. Well done. Well
That's a good one.
played. I
That's
like
better than nothing.
Yeah.
I'm undefeated.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you, Carly. That was a terrific joke to end the podcast
Really a
on.
joke.
That
All
was terrific. And now everybody who heard it knows it. All right.
Yes.
All right.
So, again, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Again, Egbert, thank you for being here. Again, the mystery word, everybody, I hope your ears were peeled for that one. We hadn't had any guesses throughout the podcast, but you do have until the next one to guess. And if you guess before Monday, we'll be doing the prize draw on Monday. Your chance to win $500 cash.
Ooh.
Everybody likes that.
Can I play?
I feel like you might be a little bit biased, unfortunately.
All right.
But hey, I appreciate the honesty.
All right.
There's a chance.
Thanks.
It's always
Yep.
good. It's always good to ask, right? So, like I said, for those of you who have yet to guess, send your guesses. Comment on the video here. You can comment after we're done streaming. But possibilities are endless. We only said, how many different words did we say throughout this podcast? Quite a few.
Did you do a word count, Carly?
Yeah.
5.
About 5 or 6.
Over 5.
Over 5. Right. Yeah, she's right. Okay. Well, everybody, rather. Thanks for tuning in. And again, next Thursday, 3 p.m., we're going to have another guest. It'll be the 27th edition of the podcast. So thanks for tuning in. Comment your answers. Hopefully you win. Goodbye, everybody. Take care and happy Thursday.
See you.